he needed to examine the threads that were carbon dated.
Until I could get a sample from the real radiocarbon cloth, a documented sample, I couldn't prove anything. The authentic radiocarbon sample that I got, these segments of yarn were cut from the middle of the radiocarbon sample, so there was no question about them. And when I looked at these samples from the radiocarbon area, there's no problem at all finding cotton in them.
Rogers was now convinced that Benford and Marino were right. And he found other evidence they had missed. He knew from his own tests in 1978 that the shroud was free of artificial dyes and pigments.
The only thing in the shroud that was dyed or stained was this radiocarbon area. So my hypothesis at the moment is that this was done on purpose to fool your eye.
This was further evidence that the shroud was repaired with cotton in exactly the area where the carbon dating sample was taken.
And when we went back and looked at the ultraviolet photographs, here is this area that's significantly darker. It doesn't fluoresce as much, and it's just this area that, around the raw sample and where the radiocarbon sample was cut. And if they had looked at any of the photographs that we had and studied the information we had as of 1978, they would have known that that was the worst possible place they could have taken a sample. I'm coming to the conclusion that it has a very good chance of being the piece of cloth that was used to bury the historic Jesus.
He writes a paper that's accepted for publication in Thermochemica Acta, January of 2005. And that paper is the only peer-reviewed science that challenges the carbon date with anything credible up until that point in time.
Rogers knew that his findings needed to be tested with more sophisticated equipment. So he contacted a colleague who still worked at Los Alamos Laboratory, Bob Villarreal.
It was a race for him because he knew he was dying. He wanted to know, is this corner of the shroud of the same composition, whether it was flax or linen or cotton? If it was cotton, it's not the same as the main shroud cloth, which is linen.
Rogers would never live to discover the answer. He lost his long battle with cancer on the 8th of March, 2005. He was 78 years old. After Ray's death, Bob Villarreal was determined to honor his promise. He passed the fibers to a specialist, and something remarkable happened.
I received a call from him and he said, the thread that I was going to analyze broke into 2 pieces. Is God going to be mad at me?
Just as Rogers suspected, the threads appeared to be 2 pieces of cotton and linen woven together. In 2008, the findings were announced to the world. They supported the theory that the carbon dating sample was poorly chosen, as Rogers suggested in his final interview.
The shroud is a very unique image, the only one of its kind in the whole world. 3-dimensional relief, the front and the back of a whole human being. Only one in the world. No other, nowhere, no how, no way. I don't know any way to make it. I've never heard of a way to make it. Just the Shroud of Turin.